Imagine living your life after 50 and feeling energized and excited about your future. Welcome to the Women in the Middle podcast, the podcast for women who are ready to figure out what they want and create the life they deserve. Here's your host and Master Certified Life Coach, Susie Rosenstein.
Hey there, today we're talking about what your bucket list wants you to know before you do anything about it. Let's go. Welcome back to the podcast Women in the Middle, where we're all about how to get unstuck, clear, and excited about your next chapter, especially if you're over 50 or 60 and feeling like life is way too short to keep waiting. I'm your host, Susie Rosenstein, your Master Certified Coach and Midlife Mentor, and I am so glad to be here with you again. If you're new here, thanks for popping in. It is a great time of year to think about what being a woman in the middle means to you, and more importantly, what you want it to mean to you. Today, we're talking about what so many of us refer to as a bucket list. Well, in this case, it's your personal bucket list. Now, I know that even the term bucket list brings up mixed feelings. On the one hand, who wants to think about what you really want to do in the same breath as thinking about what you're running out of time to do? I've explored that here on the podcast and in my Women in the Middle Academy too. Like maybe we should call a bucket list something else. Maybe an opportunity list or a dream list or even an unbucket list. But the thing is, we all know it as a bucket list. So for the purposes of this episode, I'm just going to lead with that. Just know, however, that you can call it whatever you want because the truth of the concept is that it helps us focus on what we desire. And that's a very good thing. Okay, now that we're on the same page, that it may not be the best term in the world for something that could add so much fun in your life, I wanted to talk about something super important related to your bucket list, no matter how much of reality it is at this point. If you've been listening for a while, you know we talk a lot around here about midlife clarity, about getting unstuck, and about what it really means to create a next chapter that you don't regret rushing through or missing altogether. And today we're talking about your own bucket list. And just as I hinted, it's something that tends to bring up a lot for women in midlife for all kinds of reasons. Just hearing that phrase can have you raising your eyebrows with excitement or pressure, or even a quiet voice that says, ugh, I don't even want to think about that. Now, personally, I think I've experienced all of those emotions myself. So today I want to try something different. I want you to imagine that your bucket list isn't a list at all. And it's not a red or yellow plastic beach bucket either. What if it's something completely different? What if it's a voice? Like a future version of you. Not dramatic, not disappointed, just honest and very patient. Today, we're going to let her speak. Aren't you curious about what's on her mind and what she has to share with you? So just stick with me. I think you're going to be really interested in what she has to say, especially if you haven't had a close relationship with what you actually desire. Before we jump in, let me just say this clearly. Most women don't abandon their bucket lists on purpose. With me, I had no clue that I had done this, not a clue. When you're not connected to what you really want or desire, it's not like you're saying, I'm done wanting things, or desire just isn't for me at this age. What happens instead is quieter than that. Life gets busy, responsibilities pile up, and you become very good at taking care of other people. And slowly, almost invisibly, you stop asking yourself what you want. Especially when time starts to feel a little different, and you start to feel a little different. And you and your friends are asking, where the heck is time gone? You might even have to remind yourself how old you are sometimes, like, really? I have had to count on my fingers and toes on occasion. So if your bucket list feels fuzzy, untouched, half-written, unimagined, or buried somewhere in a drawer, maybe in your head, I actually don't think you're behind. Instead, I think you're right on time. So let's imagine for a moment, if your bucket list could talk to you, not to pressure you, not to shame you, but to tell you the truth, here's what she might say. Because my amazing women in the middle, your bucket list wants you to know a few things. Now, I know this might be a lot to get your head around, but here's what I think your bucket list wants you to know. I bet she would say, you know, I was never meant to wait for someday. She might say, I wasn't created for retirement. I wasn't meant to be saved for when things slowed down or when your big giant list was all checked off. I was meant to remind you that this life, this one, matters. Because here's the truth. Many women postpone their dreams not because they don't care, but because they assume there will be more time later. And your bucket list knows this. You didn't delay because you forgot. You delayed because you were being responsible. So think about it. When did you think that there would be more time later? So it was okay to put the thing off. It's pretty common. It's pretty common for a wake-up call to shake you out of this. Now, I had a really powerful and meaningful experience with this myself. In the nutshell, we had registered with Ancestry.com, and we were curious to find some birth relatives on my father's side because he was adopted. To our happiness and joy, we found my father's half-brother. This was a couple years ago. They each had the same mother, which would have been my birth grandmother. So it was really fascinating to meet and to share stories and to really learn more about our family. She had, of course, by now passed away. But wow, I just couldn't deny how much we looked alike. It was so obvious. Everybody agreed, oh my gosh, you guys are totally related. I couldn't not see it. It was so obvious. My new uncle was in his early 80s, and I felt such urgency to meet him. It was a bit difficult for me to travel to where he lived, and I was getting so frustrated that one by one, everyone else in my family had met him. Time felt different. This situation, I was very aware that time felt different. I knew I couldn't put it off any longer, or I would have potential regrets. So I planned a vacation in the summer of 2024 that included spending a weekend with him and his family. I was so grateful I prioritized the time together, and it was a beautiful, memorable weekend. It really was. And 4 months later, he was gone. Just like that. It was a shocking loss, and thank God I prioritized figuring out how to make a trip like that happen when I did. I'll always have the 2 years of texting back and forth like record of that in my phone and sharing stories and the beautiful memories from that weekend. Someday is not guaranteed. Now, I wanted to share this moment with you. I was thinking really hard about a story for me, a personal story where I realized that time felt different, and this is the one that came up right away. So think about that for you. And just remember that someday is not guaranteed. Okay, now, here's something else that your bucket list wants you to know. She says, I'm not asking for everything, just something. Now, your bucket list is not demanding a dramatic leap or a huge change. She's not asking you to quit your job tomorrow or book a flight or blow up your life in a crazy way. She's saying, I don't need you to do everything. I just need you to stop pretending that you don't want anything, or to not allow yourself to dream about doing the thing you really want to do. Now, so many women get stuck here. They think, if I can't do it all, why bother? If I don't know how, I shouldn't even want it. Here's the thing. Desire by itself doesn't require a plan. Allowing yourself to want what you want, that just requires permission. So I wanted to share another story. I remember when I allowed myself to want to share the big dog experience with my family, just the way I grew up, right? So this is when I realized I wanted to allow myself to want this, and it's the whole story. So I grew up in a family that bred St. Bernards. You may have heard this on the podcast before. It was a huge part of my life. We were into the whole dog show thing too when I was a kid. And at 12 years old, I was showing one of our St. Bernard puppies in the puppy class at dog shows. It was huge. It was such a massive experience for me. I have such fond memories of it. And it was just a really big part of our lives as a family. I even have Facebook friends from childhood who have reached out to me to tell me how much they loved it when my dad would bring our 200+ pound Mr. Jack Mr. Jack the St. Bernard, so handsome, when he would bring him to our elementary school for show and tell. Now, at that time, we had five St. Bernards in a suburban home with a dog run, and our garage was converted for that many dogs, like a kennel. Anyway, it was really interesting time. And they were everywhere. As you can imagine, five St. Bernards, they are everywhere. They take a lot of space. Well, when I got married and we had our own kids, we were fortunate to share our lives with two golden retrievers over 20 years, not at the same time. Yofi was the first one. And after she passed, we got Jasper. And when Jasper passed, I started to think. It was also the year I turned 50. So I was doing a lot of thinking and a lot of reflecting about all kinds of things. I was just beginning to think about desire. And this was before coaching. This was before I was listening to podcasts, but I could see that I was doing that. I remember it so well. And what I was thinking was, what did I really want? And what didn't I want to have regrets about? Now, when you start doing that, it takes some time. You have to allow those thoughts to simmer. And that's when it hit me. I wanted to share the big dog experience that I had when I was a kid with my family. And I'm not talking about having a dog kennel or getting into dog shows, nothing like that. But having a big dog. And it meant so much to me. I really didn't understand why until probably the last 10 years. But I think it meant so much because that period of time where we had the St. Bernards, it was kind of a fairly normal, and I'm doing the air quotes, a normal part of my life, a normal time of my life. And you may know as a listener that I lost both of my parents quite young. And this phase with the dogs, with the St. Bernards, was a 7-year slice of time between each of my parents' deaths. So it represented the most normal, again in quotes, because I know it's not really normal. It represented the most normal part of my childhood. My father, he had remarried, so I had a 2-parent home. There were 5 kids, and we had all these dogs, and we lived in suburban Pennsylvania. So when I think about that, and when I look back at home movies, and I'm just so emotional about it, I think I attached a lot of meaning to sharing my life with those amazing dogs as part of a beautiful family experience. So it's not just that the dogs were amazing, but it was part of the whole thing. That the dogs were very stabilizing, they were very fun, it created structure. Our family was kind of well known, like so many people got so much enjoyment out of meeting the dogs. And that Mr. Jack, he was particularly big and particularly gorgeous. So I just think that period of time as a family was pretty great. I would say off the charts, in my life for sure. Anyway, it was so weird when I became aware of the thought that I wanted this. I remember it. It's like, wait, what thought was that? And then I continued to realize that maybe it wasn't a St. Bernard that would be best for us. Maybe it was a Newfoundland. Very similar looking in size, and, there's enough that's in common that you would go, oh, you know what, are they related? But a Newfoundland would make more sense for us because we spend some time at a lake. And a Newf is a good swimming breed. They're known for water rescue. And then as I was thinking that part through, like I was getting a little deeper into the desire and a teeny bit of thinking how it might work, I was like, oh my God, this is it. This would be amazing. And I started to get so excited, so joyful, so giddy. I allowed the dream. I allowed the desire, which seemed crazy at first. Could I actually give myself permission to want this? It took some getting used to. Had to process it. I really wasn't sure. But then I shared the idea with my family, and everybody loved it and wanted a Newf as fast as possible. So we met our 3-month-old, 41-pound puppy 12 years ago, Nico the Newf, and unconditional love has been flowing ever since. So has the slobber, or as we like to say, flying flugers. That's what we call the strands or blobs of drool that tend to go flying every now and again when Nico shakes. They end up on the walls, they end up on the ceiling. You're looking up sometimes, you're like, oh, what is that on the ceiling? Is that a bug? And then I take out the camera. and I do a zoom in on it and I'm like, oh, slobber. It's always slobber. So this small admission of my desire added so much meaning to our lives individually and our family. It was really I'm just so grateful that I allowed myself to go there and embrace that desire. Okay, that was a good story, right? Now, here's another thing that your bucket list wants you to know. Your responsibilities were never meant to completely overshadow your needs. Now, I might have to repeat that one. So get your head around it. Your responsibilities were never meant to completely overshadow your needs. This one can hit really deep. Your bucket list knows how much you give to everyone, to your family, to your work, to your aging parents, to your partner, to your kids, grown or not, to your friends. So many things, so many people are getting your attention, and she wants you to hear this. Loving others was never supposed to mean that you were going to disappear. Putting yourself first doesn't mean putting others last. Self-abandonment, or, like when you consistently ignore your own needs, your feelings, your values to please others, that kind of thing can become very socially acceptable in midlife. Think about how we grew up. It was very socially acceptable to do this. But your bucket list remembers who you were before everything became about everyone else. This is a big one too. They're all big. These are all big messages. Your bucket list is so smart. Okay. Your bucket list, by the way, just whispered something to me. She wants you to know that your fear might sound practical, but I know it's fear. Your bucket list is onto you. And this is also a big one. These are all big. My bucket list told me this too. Fear has been a big deal for me in my life. My bucket list is onto me. Your bucket list here's the thoughts you call being realistic or not getting too big for your britches, that kind of thing. Maybe you're thinking things like this. It's probably too late. I missed my window. Who do I think I am? I should be grateful for where I'm at, that sort of thing. And then she gently says, you didn't stop dreaming because you got older or more mature. You stopped because you learned to doubt yourself. And I say what my roommate at Westchester University used to always say, yikes. Fear in midlife often sounds like it makes a lot of sense. It's so easy to convince yourself that the path that is less scary is the best. But your bucket list, she can tell the difference. I can share a quick personal story about this topic because I have so many. Back in the day, that would be in the mid-'80s when I was thinking about and applying to grad schools, I chose not to apply to a program that I really wanted, and that was to be a psychologist. I completely decided that I wouldn't get in and that I didn't need a PhD to do the kinds of things I wanted to do professionally, so it wasn't worth the effort or the cost to apply. Now, this is legit. Back then, I was so broke that I actually emptied out the nickels in my antique gumball machine to pay for postage for my grad school applications. This is true. I was sending hard copies of my undergrad thesis, and it cost $35 in nickels to cover the postage for my 7 grad school applications, which I was excited about, but I definitely talked myself out of pursuing becoming a clinical psychologist, or even trying, right? And years later, I realized what it was really all about, and that, my friend, would be fear. Fear is all over the place for me, and I will be linking another podcast episode that I did that touches on this topic with a really fun exercise about it. It's called Fork in the Road. I'll put a link. Now, there's one more thing your bucket list wants you to know. Here we go. She says, I don't need to be checked off. I need to be honored. Now, this might be the most important one. Your bucket list is not a to-do list. It's not a to-do list. It is not a scoreboard. It's information. She says, I'm not here to rush you. I'm here to show you what matters to you. Your bucket list does want attention. And again, I have another podcast episode I want to share related to this topic. So good, so check the show notes for all of these. Now, the thing is that seeing your bucket list changes everything. When you see your bucket list, here's what I've learned working with midlife women for years. We are very good thinkers, and sometimes that is the problem. When your desires live only in your head, they can stay vague, they compete with everybody else's needs, they get talked out of existence, or what I like to say so often is they get squished. They get squished. But when you see them outside of your busy brain, you can see the patterns more easily. Clarity can soften. Resistance becomes visible, and you can stop arguing with yourself with greater ease. Clarity doesn't come from thinking harder. It comes from giving your desires somewhere to land. And this, my friend, is exactly why I created my Bucket List Vision Board Workshop. Not to help you do more, not to help you decide anything immediately, but to help you see what your bucket list has been trying to tell you, without pressure, without rushing, and without needing to know how. We don't cut up magazines. We don't set 10 goals. We slow down long enough to listen. The workshop is live, there are fun bonuses, but there will not be a replay because this is about giving yourself a real pause, not something you save for later. If this episode stirred something in you, that is your bucket list talking. You don't need answers yet. You just need to stop ignoring the voice. All the details are waiting for you in the show notes. I would love to see you in my Zoom square to come to this workshop. Now, your bucket list isn't disappointed in you. I want to make sure you really understand that. She is patient, she is wise, and she's still here. She is still here for you. That's it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Women in the Middle show. My focus as your regret-proofing midlife coach is to help you get unstuck and get on with the good stuff. Remember, being the queen of your brain domain is the best way to be. It's time to stop waiting for the right moment and start creating the happiness, excitement, joy, and fulfillment that you crave. As always, reach out if you'd like to talk about coaching together. I've got several options that might be a good fit for you, especially the Women in the Middle Academy. It's the gift that keeps on giving, and it's also something your future self will be so grateful for. Head over to www.talktosusie.com. Also, there's a new midlife quiz waiting for you as well. If you want to discover what's been keeping you stuck and learn what your future self is craving, go to www.midlifequiz.com. For show notes and links and more information about my new workshop, why you should turn your bucket list into a vision board, go to www.susierosenstein.com and click on the podcast tab and look for episode 441. And you'll also see a link there for my other show, The Women in the Middle Entrepreneurs, which is all about the reality of running your business when you're a midlife gal. It's also on iTunes, Spotify, and all the podcast places. Let's do this, ladies. It's time for you to put yourself first, one thought at a time. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk to you next week.